Sam, you have this extraordinary story where you, your brothers, some 30 other people, 38 altogether, you survived the Shoah by living in a cave for some 511 days, more than a year, almost 2 years. You lived in a cave, year and a half, you lived in a cave.
Lived in 2 caves, I have to remember.
In 2 caves. Before the caves, come back a little bit. When you're in the cave, when you first enter the cave, how old are you?
I was 16 years old.
You were 16 years old.
I think so, 1 second. Yeah. 26 and 16 is 42, yeah.
Okay. Before you go into the cave, before World War II begins, before the cloud covers life in the Ukraine, what is your Jewish life like? What is your home like? What is your family like?
We had a wonderful family life. My mother, my father, they were real good people. My father was a very charitable. He used to, every Thursday, there used to be a market day. And there were a lot of poor people that they were poor, but they had honor, you know, they were like from family that they had. And my father used to put on a kibbutz, and he used to go around and collect from me, give his money, and make these for Shabbos. That was the way my father taught us, my mother.
What were their names?
Shabse and Esther.
Shabse and Esther.
Shabse and Esther. They were wonderful people. My mother was, during the war, she was she was our leader. She was a very powerful, smart woman. She wrote, that's what happened with the book in 1960.
What was life like for you? Were you a happy child?
I was a very happy child. We were a very happy family. Our house was always full of youngsters. We were 3 brothers and 3 sisters. Everybody had friends, and my parents always invited everybody to the house. And we had a very, very lovely life, happy, and we went to Cheder, you know, like everybody. I remember my father woke me up. This I'll never forget. On a Friday morning, there was a snow up to the, you know, over there, they didn't clean it. I should go, my hours on the Saturday. Can you imagine? Friday morning, and we came into the rabbi, the poor rabbi. They woke him up. He should have the Saturday with me.
I was very happy. I had a lot of friends, and I was the captain for the team.
What team?
Soccer.
Soccer.
Not one of my friends survived. I was the only one in our town from my body that survived. We had everything in our house. Everything. We come to a Seder. Now we come Seder. My father always brought in a turkey or even a lamb, something big. And he used to flag the few cautious. He was not happy. He was.
And everybody was looking at me.
He looked like that. He had to start. He looked at me and he started laughing, so he started crying. He was a little boy, but it was okay.
Did your parents have money?
My father, when he had money, he didn't keep the money. He bought right away something. He bought fields, which was very good.
He bought fields?
Land.
Land. Mm-hmm. Yeah, as soon as he got for, let's say, to buy an acre, he got money for an acre, he bought already an acre, or 2 acres and put in half of the money.
I understand.
But this is what he wanted.
On your soccer team, were they all Jews? Were they not?
Oh yeah, all Jews. We used to play with the Ukrainian boys. They were used to hit us.
When they used to lose.
When they used to lose, they would start fighting. Yeah, They're good boys.
Okay. Did you have friends who were not Jewish?
They were not friends. I knew them like that, yeah.
No. In school, what kind of school did you go to? A regular school?
This I have to tell you with the school. We used to go in a regular school, which was out of the town. The Jewish people lived here, the Ukrainians lived here. And the way it was, When we got out of the school, soon the bell ring, we got out the boys, the Jewish boys, starts running home. And they ran after us with stones.
With swords?
With stones.
Stones.
I was the one, I looked maybe this, but I was a big fighter. Once, I have to tell the story what happened. Once, I forgot my inker and I got back to school, and as I walked out, 12 guys, 12 Ukrainian guys, they are surrounded me, and they start fighting with me. But I made myself a bag from plywood with a piece of strap. Soon the other guy picked up, smack, right in the head. I see he falls down and his blood's already there. And I, right and left, and I got away. But after, the teacher says, you bring your father. They didn't want to let me in. But my father met a day before a Polak there and says, you have a son. They used to say, it's worth to feed him. And he told them the story. That those, all the class, and I was fighting out, and he came and told the teacher this year. And the Polak came and said, okay, go in. So that's what it was. We had to, we study fights.
When I went to school, every recess we had fights. This was broiling, that anti-Semitism. And we used to stand up for each other with the Jewish boys. And every recess we had fighting and fighting. You know, every hour you used to have a recess. And when we went out, we still were fighting.
In general, the non-Jews with whom you lived, the Ukrainians, they were anti-Semitic?
Very. But we lived there for hundreds of years. And my father he used to do business with them. And he had some people that he was like brothers with them. But I'll tell you a story. Before we went, we were supposed to go to Canada in 1939. And my father says, how can I leave Alexa, Kachura, this? He was doing business with them. He was like so friendly with them. They were friends. And when the war came, when we were in there hiding, and my father came to the window and I knocked on the window, he says, Alexa. The guy says, Ron, Kikai, go. Ron, he didn't come out to give him a piece of bread. And then we had another one, Kachura. He was a mayor from a village, Mushkariu. In 1938, he came to our town. Wintertime was in February, very cold, with a swollen knee like this. And we had a very good doctor, Dr. Tibbles, next door to us. He went into the doctor told him, Kachura, you have to be in town for a few weeks. I'll tend this, but you have to live here. And he came into us, he said, there's no hotel, Korolivki. So my father says, you come in, you stay with us. He stayed with us for 6 weeks. He slept in our bed, in our house. And when the war broke out, I don't know what happened to this man. And my father went to Kachura. I mean, this Kachura should have kept the whole family. And he came in and he says to him, Kachura, Esther Kavlisi, my mother, Esther, is involved in the forest. Give us something. So the wife went in to give us something. He grabbed the stuff and he threw it on the floor. He says, get out. She doesn't need it. They're going to cover her with leaves. That kind of people. So you know, it was a mixed. Then we had one Polish man and one Ukrainian man that helped us when we were in the caves. My brother used to go to. We had Munko, that the guy gave us the idea to go into the caves.
As 41 approaches, do you ever hear your mother or your father say, there may be trouble ahead?
My mother, as soon as the Germans came in, and we had fields that the people used to work, but the Germans came in, they didn't want to work no more on the fields, so we worked. And we brought home the wheat and all the things. And my mother says to my brothers, I was a kid, make hiding places. So we made the first hiding place. We had a big silo in the corner they built it. We made like in the bottom, you build up with the bundles. and you put boards on top, and then we made a whole a corridor to crawl in.
Where is this?
In a barn.
In a barn.
Yeah, that was our first hiding place. My mother says, build hiding place. 42, they came to our town and another 5 towns around us, and they encircled, and they took away more than half of the people. They put them on trains, and they perished.
My mother, when they made the Kristallnacht, she knew exactly what happened there. I mean, the synagogue was burned there. He says, we are very close to Germany. They're going to come here. We have to run away from here. So we tried to go to Argentina because the United States and Canada didn't let in the Jewish people. So since we farmers, we're going to go to Argentina. So they came with some people that they, from Ayals or something, and they looked at us and said, you are well off here. We need your people, poor people, they should help them. But a few months or maybe a year later, my mother had the hind, and Canada is ready to take in some Jewish farmers. Right, she didn't need a secretary or somebody else or a lawyer. Right away she wrote a letter, and she right away got answer. But we had to have money, $1,000 to buy a farm, and to 4 people that should work, and to pay for our transport. And everything was right. Another letter. Then they call us into the Canadian Consul. Was it the consul or was it the doctor?
Yeah, consul with a doctor to examine us.
This was 1940, February?
No, February, not 1939.
39. They checked us out. I remember they looked at my mother's hands. And my mother had hands like, not like a lady that sits in the office. She's a poor woman.
She was cooking for a big family.
And we were ready. We sold our land, we sold our houses, we sold everything, we packed. And we were supposed to be, I think, at the 8th in Warsaw.
8th of September.
Yeah, and the 1st, the war broke out.
Wow. How do you first learn you're going to go into a cave to survive? How do you first learn that?
What happened is they took all the towns, 5 towns, and they made one ghetto. And my father and my brother went to the ghetto, to the town, Borschtov. And they had friends there, and my father came and he says, Srul, he says, bring the family. But they looked around and there was no place to make hiding places. Home we had 6. So we decided not to go to the ghetto. We decided.
By the way, who decided? Why do you say we?
The whole family.
Were you part of the discussion?
I was not the decider. I was a kid.
Who decided?
My brother, my father, my brother-in-law.
The mother.
The mother, mostly the mother.
Your mother. This is Esther.
She was.
We're not going to the ghetto, she said.
We're not going to the slaughter. The slaughter, that's all. We're going to, she says, we're not going. And another thing, when they tell you to do something, you do the opposite. She was so smart. And we decided that we should go in the cave.
Okay, how old are you at this time?
I was 16.
Were you frightened?
No, I was with my family. But the good part is that we stuck together. We were like one.
When we had to go to the cave, they felt that I'm going to be the manager there. I was the one to take care of a lot of things there.
How old were you then?
I was 21, 22 almost, yeah.
You were not scared?
No.
Okay. Did you understand what it would mean to live in a cave?
No. I understand what to live in the ghetto. This I knew that this is trouble. And the cave was good. I got inside. It was very good.
We didn't understand, but we had no choice. We knew that if we don't go to the cave, we go to the ghetto. And what's going to be in the ghetto? Typhoid and killing, and that's it. So we stuck together, and we stayed in the cave for almost 6 months. And we were struggling in the first cave. Was a problem, but there was no water.
When you go in the cave for the first time,
yeah,
do you have any idea how long you're going to stay in this cave?
No, We were.
What did you think you thought?
We were happy to survive, to go away from this world. We were like in another world.
So you didn't even worry about how
No,
long
I'm
it was
not
going to
worrying
be?
about nothing. I was just crawling around all over the cave to explore it. For 6 months, me and him, we were going around all over the place just to find out.
How could you see?
We had a little kerosene. We had like a little
bottle?
in school we used to have ink bottles. You remember? I don't know
Yes.
if you- So we made the top. We put a little wick.
Wick into
And
the
we
little...
put a little bit kerosene.
kerosene?
And that was
So you had a candle in essence.
that's it.
And you could see where you were?
Sure, we got see. You put it on because it's very dark. there.
Okay.
It's so dark.
When you started, were all 38 people with you?
No,
How many?
we were completely different people. We were 28, but we were not the same people. My family was the whole family. We were 3 brothers and 3 sisters, my brother-in-law and 2 nieces,
All in this cave?
all in the cave.
How did you have food?
That's the thing. What happened is, when they took away all the Jews from our town, the Germans came in and they said they need Altstoffsammlers. Altstoffsammlers to collect the stuff that is left. So they gave little badges and they paid them off. And my father had a horse, and they could keep the horse with my brother, my brother-in-law. And
I'm sorry, you're in the cave at this time, are you not?
but my brother and my father and my brother-in-law were outside.
Fish.
They were Altstoffsammler,
They were outside the cave?
outside the cave, yeah.
Were they in the ghetto?
No, there was no ghetto. They were in Korolovka. They allowed them to stay in Korolovka.
Why?
Because they wanted them to bring in all the stuff from the Jews to make in a warehouse.
So they were using your father and your brother as
Yeah,
helpers?
and what happened is, and because they had the horse, and the
Because your
thing
father had a horse?
had the horse, so they could bring the supplies to us in the caves.
And that's what your father and brother did?
That's what they did. My brother-in-law too.
Did they ever enter the cave themselves?
Sure, they were always. My brother used to come in and help us to build there everything, you know.
I have a friend, he tells me always, one thing I don't understand. You were 38 people in such a condition. You didn't kill each other.
Yes, by the way, I wondered that also.
And we were never had a fight.
Do you know the story of Anne Frank?
Sure, you know.
You know, there were only, a handful of people in that
Yeah.
annex. They had a very hard time with each
Time
other.
fighting.
Did you have a hard time with the
No,
people you were with?
because I was sleeping there, they were sleeping there.
We didn't have hard time because we wanted to survive, and we did everything
Together.
to please us, to make sure that we do the job. We did most of the work. When we had to go out before we went out, the day before, I was the youngest. I used to go out there and sit for 5-6 hours near the entrance on a rock. That's why when I came out, I was limping I was sitting on that rock and listening what's going on outside.
How often did you come outside?
We used to go out summertime we used to go out very often.
Every day?
No, but
only
once
at
a
night.
week. at night.
Weren't you afraid that some of the Ukrainians would see you and report you?
We were there 6 weeks. And they find out the Jews are there. He said, because this place, the way it was, a big ravine, bigger than this room much. And there was few big stones and water used to come down. And we had to go. They find out that Jews are there and they came almost a village because we find out after somebody saw us.
The Ukrainian village?
Ukrainian
Yeah.
village. And they were digging with
Shovels.
shovels and pick and they fill up this hole. They fill it up.
So you couldn't live
So
there
we couldn't
anymore?
get-
They could say,
But I told this once to a rabbi, and I told him when they did this, they made us a big favor because they make sure they can come in, but we find a way to go out. So we were 6
They
weeks.
were trying to seal you inside
Yes,
the
Sure,
cave?
they were
They're gonna-
sealed
they
completely.
say,
But they didn't know you had another exit.
No.
Sure, they thought that we have a lot of access. This was our luck.
secret.
They thought that we have. If they would know that we haven't got only one, we wouldn't be here today. They knew that we have there and there. We didn't have nothing.
They thought you had more exits than you had.
Yeah, sure. So when they did this, see, we want experience from the cave and the other people, that if you want to make, you can't make through the stone. You have to have somewhere a place to dig. As I was looking the corner, I see some earth. From right away I knew that the earth came from somewhere.
Earth.
Yeah. So we start digging, and we got through there. It was not very high. And we came in a place, if you ask me, where do you like to come out? I say this place. Because you could come out on the street. You could, and where this place was like that, it was about, I would say, 6, 7 feet around, and about 2 feet or 3 feet lower. There was the ground for millions of years going down
settled
in there. And we came out there.
You were trying to hide from the Germans, from the Nazis,
yeah.
correct?
The
Ukrainian
Ukrainian.
police.
And the
Mostly,
Ukrainians?
mostly police.
The Ukrainian
But
police.
they knew you were there.
But they knew exactly who was there.
Why didn't they report you to the Nazis?
They didn't have to report us. They were the killers.
And
The
they could-
Ukrainians were killing the Jews. The Ukrainian police killed 90% of the Jews in our
Don't
area.
forget, they couldn't come in. They had to go in. They had to slide down with the feet first. They like to go in like that with the gun. Because if they go down with the feet, we just had the axe and we cut them up a little bit shorter. But nobody, they couldn't come in.
At any time in this story, did you ever fear for your life?
What was there to fear? I was in the first cave. I was caught with the Germans, and they were standing like this to me. And he told me to get dressed, and I got away. There's nothing to be scared of. You had to fight for your life, and that's it. That was it. There was nothing you could do more than we did. And our family was together. We stuck together, and we did the right things, and we were very lucky that they didn't, when they came, we were not there. That was the lucky part.
At what point do you realize you have survived, and now it's time for you to come out of the cave, resume your life? When did that happen, and what was it like?
What happened is, in 1944, the end of March, we were liberated. But we were afraid to come out.
Do you remember the day?
Sure, I remember. I remember every day.
Describe it for me.
We were excited. The first thing we did, we ran to the kitchen. We kept cooking and eating, because we always had a lot of supplies.
You see, he was inside. I got out with my brother. By the end of March, the way we got out and we started going up and we hear woo, 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 woo. My brother was already in the army. He said, hey.
That was before liberation.
Yeah, before the liberation, a few weeks. He says, my brother says, hey, this is cannons. It looks like they are close by. And as we go up further, we see a fire there, a fire there. And we come into our friend Munko, and he tells us, the Germans are retreating, and you're going to be liberated soon. And we come running inside. You imagine this here when we told the people that we're going to be liberated. Everybody was flying. Everybody was crying and yelling. Ay, ay, ay. But in the meantime, everybody started cooking.
That's lovely. You started this story by telling me about your remarkable mother. Do you remember your mother at the end of this 511 days? In some way, it seems to me that she gets an awful lot of credit for the fact that all of you survived, yes?
She does. She told us what to do, where to go. You know, we were there for a year. She knew exactly when the moon is high and the moon is low, and she never went outside. And she knew when the holidays were there. Yom Kippur, my brother-in-law was davening all day. He had a mouth. My brother-in-law. And my mother was telling us, she was like our leader.
In the first cave, somehow, I don't know what happened to me, I got a shock.
No, no, when the Germans came in,
When the Germans came in, I don't even remember what happened to me. Because everybody was in the chimney, and as my mother came back, he brought her back, I was lying on the ground, finished. My mother, they pushed me through there, and she was almost carrying me, maybe 8 kilometers. It was mud and snow, but she didn't leave me there. She brought me to a farmer there. This was a mother.
This was a mother. Sam and Saul Stermer, you are extraordinary people. And it is extraordinarily kind of you that you go out of your way to tell your story. I hope you understand how much it means to us that you make sure your story is told. It's more than a story of survival. In some way, you symbolize the transcendence of the Jewish people. I wish you long life, health, kol tuv v'hatzlacha. May you always be happy, successful. And it is my hope that there are times when I get to meet you having nothing to do with television. I very, very much appreciate your giving me some time, and I love you very, very much. Esther Stermer was your grandmother?
She was my mother's mother.
So Saul and Sam are your uncles?
Uncles, yes.
So Sima and Sonia, you also spent more than 500 days in a cave in order to survive.
Yes.
Sonia, how old were you when you went into the cave?
I was 8.5, almost 9 years old.
And you were?
I must have been around 4 years old.
At 8 years old, you probably can remember what that was like. Is that true?
I remember everything that happened.
When you first learn that you are going into a cave and you're an 8-year-old child,
Actually, almost 9.
almost 9, did it seem to you, in the literal sense, this is incredible? Were you frightened? Was it an adventure? Sonia, how did you feel about it?
Let me tell you something. We never went to a ghetto. So I was always in a bunker. And when you're in a bunker, you have to be quiet. You cannot move around. The only time you'll get up is if you have to go to the bathroom. When I heard that we're going to a grotto, I didn't know what to expect. Once I got into the grotto, my God, it felt like I had a castle. Because I could run around, I could scream, I could sing. I used to like to recite poetry. I could tell poetry, I could sing songs. And I felt that I had space. And when you sit in a bunker, it's a small little bunker, you know, and my mother would always sit like this. I should be quiet. And also to my sister. This was our, you know, instead of saying, I love you, shh. So once I got to the grotto, it was wonderful. The only time it wasn't wonderful was when we were discovered by the Gestapo. When we were discovered by the Gestapo, a couple went under our bed. And my mother had only room to hide one child. And she chose me. Since I was older, I would be able to take care of myself. And she remained with my sister. And all of a sudden, I saw black boots. And they were taking my mother and my sister away. And I never thought I'll see her again. That is one of the hardest memories that a child can have of losing a mother and a sister. And how fortunate I was when my mother and sister were brought out by the Ukrainian police. It's a whole story. But when I came back to my grandmother's house and I saw my mother and my sister alive, There wasn't another child in this world that was as lucky as me.
Sonia, that's a very beautiful story. How did your mother survive once she was taken away by the Nazis?
But what happened was, there was a Jewish doctor, Bodyan, in Bilcheslotte, where Verteva the cave is. And he knew the Ukrainian policeman. My father and my grandfather went to ask Dr. Bodyan he should intervene. And they made a plan that they were going to buy them out. But the Ukrainian head of the police, he wasn't willing to let them go. He said, there was also a cousin, Usha Metzger, and there was there my aunt Leitje and my cousin Lontje. He said, I'll let them go, but you have to bring 5 bodies. So they had to go and look for a place where they just killed a lot of people, to open up a big grave and to find 2 women, a man, and 2 small children. What a terrible ordeal this was for them, but in order to save my mother and my aunt and my cousin and my sister, and also Usha Metzger, they went ahead and they did this terrible ordeal. They had to dig in the cemetery graves, put in the people, and then my sister will tell you what happened because she's the one who was caught. And let her tell you how it felt to go to the cemetery and how. Let my sister tell you.
Do you remember that you were very young?
I was very young, but that was like the most dramatic part of my entire life. The Germans came in. And
Into the cave.
Into the cave, and they were screaming. They always spoke very loudly. My sister was hidden under the bed, and my mother was trying to dress me because it was March and it was very cold outside, and she was afraid to go under the bed because the German might see Sonia lying there. So somehow the shoe was pushed out, but while she was dressing me, he kept saying, "Schnell, schnell." That means fast, fast, let's not waste time. And he said, you know what? You don't have to put her on her shoes and her coat. I can kill her right here. So my mother begged him not to kill me. And somehow she dressed me. And I remember how she carried me. I remember the weather outside. It was snow and cold and bitter. And she was carrying me on her hands that my boots shouldn't get wet. And they threw us into the police station. And there was no ground. We were lying just on like earth. And we stayed there for the night.
How old were you now?
I must have been 4.
4 years old?
4 or 4 and a half.
But the memory is vivid for you.
It's a horrible memory because it was like, I understood what was going on. You know, a child at that time of 4 is different than a child of 4 today. I knew exactly what was happening. They were going to take us out and they were going to shoot us.
You expected to die?
I expected to die.
And was the fear overwhelming?
I was very scared, but I was with my mother, and they did take us out to the cemetery where, as my sister told you, everything was prepared. There were other bodies in our place, and he said, this was the Ukrainian policeman. He said to us that we should lie down. He's going to shoot 5 times into the air, and then we should just run away. My mother had a big black shawl, and she covered me up with the shawl because they told us to lie down. And she said, Pepkala, don't be afraid. They're just going to shoot in the air, and then we're all going to run away. And we did hear 5 shots, and then he said in Ukrainian, Uchakai, which means run away. And we got up, and my mother sees that we're the only ones, us and Usha Metzger, are standing, and the others are
and
just
Aunt
lying.
Leitje.
Aunt Leitje and her son Lontje, they're just lying there. She says, what did you do? We had a bargain. We had an agreement that you would take the gold and you would let us go. He said, if you're going to speak anymore, I'll shoot you here. Better run away.
And where did you run to?
My father and my father Fishel Dodyk and my uncle Missel were waiting in the forest for us. And that's the other thing I remember. I was a little child and I weighed very little. I was very skinny. We had to run probably about 8 kilometers to the city. They couldn't carry me. In the end, my uncle took a bag, a large bag which he had. He put me on the bag and he carried me on his back. When we ran away, we had nowhere to go because the cave was discovered. He took us to a supposed friend, my father, that is, Fishel Dodyk, took us to a friend and they put us into a barn. And I remember we were sitting in the barn, Sonia, my mother, and I, and it was raining outside, and we were looking outside. And I saw chickens running around outside and dogs running around outside. And I just turned to my mother and I said, "You know, Mother, I don't understand. How come the dogs and the chickens can run around outside freely and we have to hide here?" It just didn't make sense.
How long did you live that way?
We lived there just for a few days. Then
And
my
then?
father took us back to my grandmother's house, where we went back into hiding. You know, my grandmother had 6 bunkers. But once we were in those bunkers, my grandmother was a very smart woman. I mean, her wisdom was legendary. My grandmother said to my uncle, look, I'm sure my uncle said the story, we're a large family, you have to go and find a place for us to live. Fortunately, my uncle had this friend Munko, who was he was a trapper of animals. And he was a farmer. And my uncle asked him, "Munko, I have a large family. Where can I go? What can I do?" So he told him, he said, "I went fox hunting one day, and my fox ran into a hole, and I followed, and I fell into this deep, deep hole, and I realized that it was a cave." And I guess my uncles felt that we had already lived in a cave. We were used to it, and where else was there to go? There was clearly no place on earth for us to go.
Sonia, you understand that you and your sister have an extraordinary story of survival.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And we also know 6 million did not survive.
No.
And there were those who did. You're among those who did. It was in some way your grandmother. It was Esther,
Yes.
Yes.
whom also your uncles tell me was an extraordinary human being.
I said,
And, you know, I assume you would say that in part, one of the reasons you survived was you were very lucky.
No. We were lucky. But we were lucky to have a grandmother by the name of Esther Stermer. And this is her book that she wrote. My grandmother was the most courageous lady that anyone can have. And we're so lucky to have been part of her family because she had wisdom and she had courage and she was not afraid. When we were caught by the Gestapo, she didn't sit down and cry and try to hide herself. She got up, she was a tall woman, and she went to see the Gestapo and she spoke to them. And the thing is that every time, I'm a grown-up woman now, I'm 79 years old, and whenever I think of something that is happening to me in my life, I think, what would my grandmother have done? Because she was courageous, she was wonderful, and above all, she was our Bobby.
Did you ever get over that event when the Gestapo took you and your mother? You understand, and by the way, you're a very bright woman. You've met many people in your life. You know that what happens to a 4-year-old can very often shape who they become. As you look back at your own life, how do you feel you were able to transcend that extraordinary experience?
first of all, I realized how important family is. I truly thank God that we have all survived. The only several people that perished right after we were liberated. Unfortunately, it was my grandfather, Shapse, and my father, Fischl Dodyk, was murdered. They were both murdered by Ukrainians. But Sonia and I are so fortunate to have survived with a mother, with grandmother, with aunts and uncles, and we were always together. This is our blessing, and it gave us strength. We know that we have to fight for whatever we need to do. It's like fight to survive. You have to stand up for whatever you feel is right, and we do.
Sima and Sonia, it has been an honor for me to sit with you. I wish you long life. Kol tuv v'hatzlacha, may you be successful, you, your children, generations. And it's my hope that every now and then I will be privileged to be in your presence. You are two remarkable people. I'm thrilled that you had the grandmother you had. And it seems that she really helped herself and another 37 people survive what is the darkest night in human history. And it has been so kind of you to spend a moment telling us your story. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you for the interview.
Thank you
It's really
so
been a
much.
pleasure.
We would be pleased to send a complimentary DVD of this program to anyone who wishes to support Shalom TV with a tax-deductible gift of $36, WWII or more, to the nonprofit organization Jewish Education in Media. Simply visit the Shalom TV website homepage and click on the Donate button to make a donation by PayPal or your credit card. And please indicate the program for which you would like a DVD. Or you can send your tax-deductible check made out to GEM, Post Office Box 180, Riverdale Station, Bronx, New York, 10471. And again, please remember to indicate which program you would like to receive on DVD with our compliments. And we thank you for your kind support.